Hey, back to Facebook Live with Insight 8. It's me, Corey. I am excited to be back after a week off. I hope that you saw Mars Facebook Live last week because it was awesome. I loved it. And her story was so beautiful, talking about self-care and self-love. I think it's such an important thing to focus on, especially in this month of relationships. And, she shared such a beautiful story. And if you didn't look at it, I think you should definitely go check it out because it was great. But I wanted to kind of jump off of what she said because there were a couple of things that really stuck out to me that I've been focusing on over this past week. She talked about setting your ships to sail, the relationships, the friendships, the kinships. And something that really struck out is like, how do you balance all of those things? Because we often have to balance, it's like juggling a bunch of balls, right? Like you've got your work, you've got your friends, you've got your family, you've got all of these things that you're trying to keep up in the air. And how do you keep those things from dropping? And one of the questions she asks was, what's your equation? And I thought that was such a perfect way of saying it because it's not like, okay, I have all these things to do. If I do this and this and this, then boom, input comes out, output comes out, and it's perfect, right? It's like you have to sort of like tweak that equation sometimes. Like sometimes it really fits and sometimes it doesn't fit. And sometimes what used to work stops working and you're trying to like balance all these things and put them into the equation and try to come out with happiness at the end, right? And self-love and self-care can be complicated because very often we're juggling all those balls and we have to make a choice. I think that was one of the things that Mara really talked about is like prioritizing which balls are you prioritizing. And I think what she really talked about is like making sure that the balls you are juggling are the ones that you want to be juggling. But very often we're juggling balls that we want, all of them. We want all of these things. We want to make them all work. And that requires a choice. And in general, choice creates conflict. And it often, we have to choose between two things. And a lot of the time, those are two things that we like. It's called approach conflict, where we have two good options and we want to do both of them. Like we have two great plans to do Friday night, or we could hang out with family, or we could hang out with friends, or we could do this project for work, or we could spend time with friends. The things that we both like, or like we both like those options, and that still creates conflict because it's like you only have so much time for one of them. And then there's approach avoidance conflict, where you have two options that you like, but the chance of something bad happening. So you have an option of like going out on a date. That sounds great, but you could be rejected by that person, or you could invest money, but you could lose that money. So you have kind of that approach avoidance. It's a good option, but there's pros and cons. Or there's avoidance. You've got to choose between two bad options, which is the worst kind of conflict, but it happens where you have to make a decision between two options that are kind of sucky, but you have to pick one of them. And it's like, which consequences are you more willing to live with? So you have all that conflict going on internally, trying to decide what do I do? How do I take care of myself? How do I love myself? How do I really, put this equation together? How do I put all these things into the equation that are going to make me the happiest that I can be? And then you realize that we don't exist in a vacuum, right? Like our equation is great. We can put all of our things into our equation, but there's more in our equation than just us. There's our friends, there's our families, there's all those ships and our coworkers, all those things, all those ships have an influence on our equation. And so you can put in all the perfect things to take care of yourself, and then someone gets sick, or someone needs your attention, or someone is having a birthday party and you want to go, and that equation gets out of balance. And then that's a whole nother question, right? Like, how do you balance your equation when you're not the only one putting things into it or taking things out of it? You've got influences of the people around you. And, I think in this month, in February, we talk a lot about romantic relationships. I know Mara talked a little bit about hers, and I think that she did a great job, and it was so awesome. And, Valentine's Day is next week, so it's hard to avoid it. And it's also, I think it's important to talk about in terms of romantic relationships, friendships, kinships, all of those ships. How do you balance when you are both inputting into each other's equations? My boyfriend is an originator, a primal originator. And I've told you before, I'm a primal nourisher. So if you look at the printout that you get when you take the Inside 8 test, the primal personality test at inside8.com, it tells you what are overall kind of values of both groups, what's a potential conflict between those groups, areas of compatibility, and then like possible shared interests, right? So one of the things that I really realized in my current relationship, one of the areas of potential conflict between my boyfriend and I is that I tend to have a care and a commitment for self-care and making sure that my equation is good and that other people's equations are good. So it's all about kind of taking care of yourself and doing the things you need to do to figure out that equation, right? And Mark really cares about others, like to a fault sometimes. He cares about others. And it's not a fault. He's just the nicest person in the world. But that is really sometimes an area of conflict where I'm focused on making sure we're caring for ourselves. And to him, sometimes that means caring for me. And sometimes it's like, dude, like care about yourself. Like, what do you want? What do you need? So that we can both kind of find an area of like mutual happiness. But sometimes it's hard to balance that piece. Like his equation is different than mine. And how do we make it so that our values and our needs are both met when things are so different, yet also, they work in line with each other. I think originators and nourishers are a really good match because they're both involved with planning and caring and commitment to gaining knowledge and doing things outdoors and things like that. So we have a ton of compatibility, and that's awesome. It's also just realizing that we're also different and like getting our needs met is different. So that my challenge for you this week, I give you a challenge every week, right? Figure out what kinds of things are in your equation. What's your fail-safe? What's your go-to? I know for me, sometimes when all else fails, it's French fries. I get some French fries, those make me feel better. I recognize like that's my stress relief sometimes. Sometimes it's cleaning my house. Sometimes it's taking a bath. And it changes, but French fries tends to be the sort of fail-safe in terms of coping strategies. I don't know if it's the most effective, but it doesn't happen that often. And in terms of my relationship, it's sort of slowing down a little bit and recognizing what are my needs, what are his needs, and how do we kind of come to a compromise on that. So, before I go, awesome promotion going on right now. If you're in India, hello, 50% off of the test. If you're in India, go to our Facebook page or inside8.com and use the code inside8India. You can copy and paste from Facebook to see what that is, and you get 50% off. So that's a really awesome deal. So I want to see what you get. What are your results? How does that impact how you interact with other people? Because I know that it has definitely influenced the way that I interact with others. So let me know how it goes. Awesome. See you next week.